My parents kicked me out so that my brother and his woman who was pregnant could use my room as a nursery. They told me I was lying when I said I was paying my rent, but I was. It was hard for me because my family didn't have much money. When we were kids, my brother Kevin and I didn't have much. Even though my dad worked in a plant, it looked like all the money he made went to drugs. But my mom worked as a cashier. Her job didn't pay very well. She had to deal with a lot of rude people, so she smoked pot or got drunk every night. Of course, they didn't take care of me and my brother with the little money they got. Instead, they spent it on bad habits that cost them a lot of money. At home, things were tough. The house never had any good food. There were times when we had nothing to eat and our cabinets were almost empty. It was nice that our clothes were rarely clean. We slept on blankets that were old and dirty and thrown on the floor. We got what little furniture we had by finding it at a thrift store or in someone's yard after they had thrown it away. The house felt more like a shelter than a place to live most of the time, because we didn't always have the things we needed. Perhaps you want to know why CPS wasn't called. It's because the town we lived in wasn't much better. My brother and I didn't really have a way out because parents didn't care about their kids in a lot of places. There were families all around us who were also having a hard time. It looked like nobody cared about their kids. That's not my parents at all. They didn't even check to see if we went to school every day, let alone how we were doing in class. It looked like they didn't care about our future or school. They didn't mind if we asked for medicine when we were sick or ate dinner before bed. Also, Mom and Dad had a lot of fights that got nasty sometimes. During those times, I would hide in my room. They couldn't get away because they could hear people screaming and breaking things downstairs. During those sad times, Kevin would often come into my room. We would play music together and make it loud enough to drown out the screaming. The songs would keep playing in our heads. We took a break from real life, and it helped us deal with things. My brother and I were sad that our parents didn't care about us. We learned how to count on each other and look after ourselves. Kevin always tried to help me look ahead, even when things were tough in the present. He was telling me to focus on my work and not worry. He told me that I could grow up and live a different life, away from the troubles we were having, if I worked hard. Also, I had no question that Kevin was smarter than me. He always seemed to have a plan. He always said that his goal was to go to college, become famous, and get away from the people our parents knew. Kevin was getting better at school over time, but then something strange happened. In our church, folks began to notice, and often told my parents how well their son was doing. Things had never been important in our family, and our parents had never really been interested in us going to school. This new attention was big for us. For the first time in their lives, our parents felt like they had something to be proud of. It was like they saw something clear. That thing was my brother Kevin. This is when the favoritism began. People in my family paid attention to what Kevin did, even though they had never asked about our grades, or even if we went to school. They quickly used his success against us, and told our family and neighbor about it like it was their own. Kevin was treated like the most important thing they owned, and they showed him off to everyone who would listen. They kept talking about how great their son was doing, as if his achievements could erase the years when they didn't care about him. Kevin began to enjoy all the attention, which makes sense. I felt sorry for him. For the first time, both of our parents were interested in his life and proud of him in a way they had never been before. I could see why he would want to take it all in. Things were very different from how they had always been. Finally, being interested in him must have felt like a breath of fresh air after years of being ignored or brushed off. But what started out as my parents being proud of Kevin's achievements quickly turned into them saying I was just like him. When I didn't get as good of grades as Kevin, my mom would tease me. She told me I had to work harder, be more focused, and be in charge like he was. I tried to tell her I was sorry many times, but she always said it wasn't enough. It wasn't just grades either. All of a sudden, my parents didn't like it when I wanted to stay after school to hang out with my friends and play hoops. These kids would tell me to do my homework right away when I got home because I needed to work hard to keep up with their cute Kevin. The new rules they set for me were too much for me to handle. People were always expecting more and better from the things that used to make me happy, like basketball, music, and even just hanging out with friends. As you might guess, it hurt to always be compared to my brother. At first, I tried to ignore it by telling myself that Kevin wasn't really to blame because he wasn't the one who made things worse. Over time, though, things began to shift. Kevin seemed to like the attention he was getting more and more, which made him change. I stopped seeing him and being there for me soon after, even when I had nice things to say about our parents. He stopped being there for me like he always did and began to agree with them. He told me not to say bad things about our parents and that I was overreacting. He also said I was wrong about how bad they were. Kevin was the only person who used to help me and understand me, so when he said that, I started to doubt myself. I began to believe that he might be correct, and I was only wrong. There's too much to think about. My parents liked Kevin more than anyone else, though, and it became more and more clear over time. For example, Kevin would tell my dad that he needed new school tools like books and pens when he got paid. My dad would give him money right away so he could buy things for school. My dad said no when I asked for the same things, though. He would tell me I could use Kevin's old, worn-out books or old things that had been thrown away instead. He would say that he didn't have enough money to take care of both of us, and that Kevin was more important if I told him this was wrong. It wasn't just school bags either. All of a sudden, my mom wanted to cook meals for my brother, but she would only make things that he liked. It didn't matter if I liked the food or not. It was. It's important that my brother was pleased. It hurt and insulted me to be told that my needs were less important because I wasn't Kevin. These little things kept adding up. They all told me over and over that Kevin was more important to our parents. But Kevin began to feel like he earned it more, so he didn't say anything about being picked on. The truth hurt more than anything else. I was sad when my brother died. He was always there for me. I felt like I was going through everything by myself now that Kevin wasn't on my side. But we were losing the one strong link we had, and I didn't know how to deal with the growing sadness and anger that it made me feel. I was so happy for Kevin. Because he did so well in school, he got into a good college and got a full grant. I was glad he finally got the praise he deserved. Our family was proud of it. To honor Kevin's achievement, my parents chose to treat him to a fancy dinner. Their pride made them want to show him how happy and proud they were. When I asked if I could join the party, they said that the dinner was only for Kevin. It hurt to hear that. Kevin didn't say anything to protect me, which hurt even more. I didn't feel welcome because he didn't invite me or do anything else. He used to stand up for me, and it broke my heart that he didn't. At that point, I knew Kevin. It made him happy to be the center of attention and make him forget about me. That night was already bad enough without me getting into a fight with them, so I left my brother and my parents to have fun. Soon after, Kevin moved out to start college. The house felt strange and empty when he left. When my parents and I were by ourselves, things went back to how they were before Kevin got better, but it felt even worse this time. They stopped talking to me, but they were really proud of Kevin. They didn't seem to care about me before Kevin became their golden child when he wasn't there. They didn't have anything interesting to talk about with their neighbors and stopped being interested in my life. I could only hear excitement in their voices when Kevin called from college. It sounds. Kevin picked up the phone when it rang. It would make their eyes shine. They got excited all of a sudden and asked about his college life, classes, and friends. He was like a kid, and everything revolved around him. They didn't seem interested or ask any questions when I told them about school. They would just nod sometimes. People told me Kevin did better than me when I was that age, even though I worked harder and got better grades. In other words, I still wasn't doing enough. Like everything wasn't painful enough already. In the living room one time, I heard my parents talking about how happy they were to have at least one great kid. It hurts so much to hear this. My dad told me that my mom should have. They could have given my brother a much better life if they hadn't had me. They stopped getting pregnant after Kevin. I felt terrible hearing those words. It hurt to hear my parents say they wished I hadn't been born. In my heart, I've always known that they liked Kevin more than me. Was I really just a regular kid? They didn't care about me at all, right? I didn't feel like I was there or important when they talked to me. It dawned on me that maybe everything I thought about myself was wrong. Maybe I wasn't smart enough, good enough, or special enough for them to love me. Having that much fear was tough. No matter what I did, it seemed like I could never be as good as Kevin. That much pain is hard to deal with, and I felt lost and alone in a way I had never felt before. Lucky for us, this is a tough time. I fell in love with Nate. Our friends put us in touch with each other. He was there when we first met. Told me my eyes looked sad and beautiful at the same time. The way he said it made me think he saw something in me that most people didn't. The man seemed to be able to see through my mask and feel my pain. Nate's neighborhood was a little better than mine. We quickly found things we had in common, even though we were from different places. Things that were just hanging out at first turned into something more important over time. When we finally went on a date, it was clear that we were meant to be together. We had a lot of energy, and I felt like we clicked in a way I hadn't felt before. As a young person, I was told that love doesn't last. But Nate is my first real boyfriend, and I really hope that ours will. He has become such an important part of my life that I think we should stay together. Because my parents didn't care about me, I was in a bad place. My boyfriend has helped me get out of that place by listening to me talk for hours about my family, my problems, and the grief I've been carrying for a long time. He never made me feel like my pain was too much, or that I was a problem. Before I met Nate, I didn't think it was possible to be hopeful and happy at the same time. This made me want to do better in school and get better grades. In order to save money and finally move out from under my parents' roof, I even got part-time jobs. Nate gave me hope that things would get better, even though I knew my journey would be hard. But when I turned 18, things got even worse for me. My parents told me it was time to start renting from them. They already knew that I had been working part-time to save money, having part-time jobs over the years. They seemed to want a piece of my money now that I was an adult and didn't need their help anymore. I tried to let them know that I was still applying to schools and was waiting to hear from a few of them. They wouldn't let me stay rent-free until I moved out, even though I was about to. They made it clear that they were done raising me and that I needed to leave if I wasn't going to start paying rent. I cried a lot because it seemed so wrong. After he turned 18, my brother Kevin was never asked to pay rent, not even when he lived with us before college. Something else that came to mind was how biased my family had always been. I thought they were lying to me. Nate asked me to move in with him, and he said that his parents were okay with it. It was so thoughtful and kind of you to offer, and it made me feel so grateful. I liked it a lot, but I wasn't ready. Moving in together seemed like a big step that was made too quickly with everything going on. I didn't want to risk our relationship by moving in with him before we were both ready, so I turned down his offer. I had to ask my parents to rent to me finally. It was hard because the people who were supposed to help me were now trying to get money from me. I helped them pay their bills and buy food when they couldn't, and I also paid their rent. My dad would sometimes forget to pay these bills and buy drugs with the money instead, just so he could ask me to pay them. It was clear he was after something, and it hurt to see how little he cared about how much stress he was causing me. But I didn't say anything because they told me not to. I didn't want to start a fight with them, so I couldn't say no. Kevin called to tell us some bad news. He was seeing a pregnant woman. It was a big surprise because Kevin had only been seeing this woman for a few months. We didn't see this coming at all. The way Kevin spoke when he called was tense and weak. He said that his girlfriend's family was very strict and didn't like it when women got pregnant before they got married. They needed a safe place for her to stay while she was pregnant. He wanted to move back in with her because the rent was already too high. Kevin also said he didn't want to spend all of his, not to pay rent and bills, but to save the money to help raise his child. He told them it would only be for a short time until they could get their lives back on track and find a better place to live. He asked my parents to do something, and they said yes without even telling me. Really, I couldn't understand why they were so eager to help him. It made me mad. Kevin, his girlfriend, and their baby would not have been able to fit in his old room because our house wasn't very big. But the next day, after I talked to Kevin, my parents called to tell me I had to leave their house because Kevin and his girlfriend were coming in. What I heard shocked me. My dad told me they had to do this so they could turn my room into a nursery for the baby if I asked him why. I told them this wasn't fair to try to get them to fight. I told him I had nowhere to go and Kevin should be able to handle things on his own since he is an adult. That being said, my parents were not moved. Instead, they told me it was about their child and that I shouldn't fight with them because I was selfish and only cared about myself. They didn't know that I was still figuring out my plans or that I had to pay rent every month. They only wanted to help Kevin and make sure the baby had a place to sleep. Right away, my mom told me I had 1 week to get ready and leave. Nate offered to let me move in with him, and I had no choice but to accept. Yes, Nate was very helpful. He helped me load my things into his truck and pack them up. While I packed, I tried not to cry, but I just couldn't help it. No matter what, That house and my room had always been a safe place for me. I had grown up there. I sobbed. I dreamed of a better life while I slept there. My room was the only safe thing I had left in that house, which I didn't like at all, but I had no choice. It wasn't easy at first for me to move in with Nate because it was a big change. They were aware of what was going on with me and seemed to feel very bad about it. It was hard to get used to, even though I appreciated how hard they tried to make me feel at home. At the same time, Kevin and his partner moved in with our parents as planned. Kevin only called me once after the move, probably because he felt he had to. He meant to. I was in that place. He told me that our parents had pretty much kicked me out so that he and his new family could live with them. At the very least, I thought he would be shocked, but he tried to play it down. Like getting kicked out of my house wasn't a big deal. He said it was just a small thing he had to do for his family. I didn't understand what I heard. He was picked on by our parents over the years, and I told him that it was worse now because they didn't pay any attention to me. Kevin, on the other hand, didn't try to understand. He told me I was acting like a kid and that I was jealous instead. I knew at that point that I could not be friends with him anymore. I thought that maybe, deep down, he still. As his sister, he cared about me, but his answer made it clear that I was being left alone. That's when I decided I was done with him and our parents too. That was their golden child and his girlfriend living a happy ever after. I wasn't going to stand in their way. No matter what, I had to let go and put my attention on myself, even if that meant breaking up with them. Now that I've lived with Nate for 3 months, things are getting better. My life is much more stable now that I live with him. The routine has helped me get used to it. My parents have never gotten in touch with me during this whole time. They haven't called to check on me or ask how I'm doing. It wasn't planned for me to answer the phone when my mom called me today. When I got back from lunch, I saw that both of my parents had missed calls, which made me a little worried. I chose to call them again, and when I did, Kevin and his girlfriend had moved out of my parents' house without them knowing the night before, according to my dad. They only found out about it this morning. I was shocked and asked what was going on. In the beginning, my parents were okay with Kevin and his girlfriend moving in. They just didn't know how much it would cost. She ate everything, which made my dad mad. The thought of having 2 extra people live with them didn't seem like it would cost that much. They asked Kevin and his girlfriend to help pay for food and other costs when the bills started to pile up. Kevin and his girlfriend said no, though. Since the terms hadn't been thought over, they said it wasn't fair to ask them to pay for anything over before. They thought they wouldn't have to pay rent or any other bills when they moved in. My parents told Kevin that it was tough for them to pay all their bills. Kevin tried to get my parents to help him because he was their son, and that wouldn't cause any trouble. 4 of them got into a bigger fight. My mom got so mad that she called Kevin's girlfriend a cash digger for living with them for free. Because of this, Kevin and his girlfriend have moved out. Kevin told my parents in a note that he was done with them for good. My mom has called him and his girlfriend several times since then to say sorry, but they haven't answered. My dad picked to, in the middle of all this chaos, ask me for help. He told me to call Kevin and find out how he was. Even though my brother and I didn't get along very well, I told him I would do my best. After telling me this, my dad did something shocking. He told me that he and my mom had talked about it, and they knew I should go back home. It seemed odd that they would want that since they had just kicked me out 3 months before. My dad told them they could start getting rent from me if I moved back in. They could pay their bills and take care of Kevin and his girlfriend for free, so they wouldn't have to pay anything. My dad was so rude that he told me to sleep on the... My room was already a nursery, so I slept on the couch in the living room. I just shook my head because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That was after they threw me out to make room for Kevin and his new family. They wanted me to pay rent and live on the couch again. I was so mad that I told my dad right away that I wasn't going to move back in with them. He brought up such a stupid idea, so I told him that he and my mom should feel bad about it. Why didn't Ida want to live with my parents again? I'm glad that everyone agrees that I'm not to blame. I think it's funny that my parents think they are. They deserve everything they get. What makes me grateful for Nate? Without him, I don't know what I would have done. After calling my dad to see how Kevin was doing, I did call him to see how he was. I got a text message from him saying he's busy right now but will call me back soon. I'll let you know what's going on once I talk to him. When I talked to my brother, I learned that my mom and his girlfriend were having more issues than my dad had told me before. The bad news is that my mom would always say mean things about how Kevin's partner looked. She would tell you what child clothes to buy and how the room should look. There was even a fight over the baby's name between our parents and Kevin and his girlfriend. Because they thought it was too easy, they had to pick a name for my dad's side of the family. I was yelled at by my mom when Kevin's girlfriend said no. She was told to be more polite and learn how to make family decisions. Kevin thought it would be best for his girlfriend's mental health if they broke up right away after the big fight. Kevin told me that they are fine while they are staying with one of his friends. He also said he was sorry and that he should have listened to me sooner. I was right the whole time about how badly our parents treated us. I felt a little better after hearing my brother say that. I'm sorry, but I don't. You might think that saying sorry once will make things better. Being mean to his woman, just like they were mean to me, was the only thing that finally made my brother get it. Thank you for all your help over the past few months. Well, I'm finally happy to say that I got into a nearby college. Nate and I are very excited to start this new part of our lives together. I was able to save a lot of money thanks to his help. I'm now going to share a small apartment with someone else. If you're interested, Kevin and his wife are doing great. Because my brother and I cut ties with our parents, our friendship has also grown. They got rid of me so they could have my brother, which makes me happy. It made me want to leave them and do more for myself.